Live Text Access Training for Real-Time Intralingual Subtitlers.
This is Unit 2, Linguistic Competence. Element 3, How to Cope with Speech-Related Challenges. Accessible Communication and Plain Language Strategies, created by UAB and SSML. The learning outcomes for this unit are to describe the concepts of accessible communication and plain language. Apply recommendations for text simplification in line with current, easy, and plain language guidelines. Apply plain language guidelines for accessible subtitles. In this unit, we will be dealing with the following points: accessible communication, recommendations for text simplification, plain language in real-time intralingual subtitles, and we will finish with a summary. Accessible communication. To make communication accessible, the barriers that prevent access to the content have to be removed. The prerequisite for removing the barriers is to have better information about which groups react to the different text features and in what way. If the text is too complex on any language level and users need longer to perceive and comprehend, this will have a negative effect on comprehension. However, information reduction in accessible communication is not always well received. In subtitling, demands from deaf users not to put out information are often. The situation in audiovisual translation, however, is special as the source text remains present in the target situation, and deaf users can partially understand what is being said through lip reading, and thus expect those words to appear in the subtitle. Easy and plain language are forms of accessible communication that place an emphasis on comprehensibility. If the source text is too technical or contains too much information, easy and plain language strategies might help to improve the comprehension. Plain language. A communication is in plain language if its wording, structure, and design are so clear that the intended audience can easily find what they need, understand what they find, and use that information, according to Eugenie and Roth's 2017. Plain language. Some basic principles are that active verbs are preferred, use the forms you and we, use words that are appropriate for the reader, don't be afraid to give instructions, avoid nominalizations, and use lists where appropriate. An example of plain language would be the following. Bad example, we would like to ensure that we are prepared to implement the necessary steps required to control an outbreak of an infectious disease that represents a risk to patients, employees, and others associated with our clinics. This can be turned into a good example as follows. We want to make sure that we are ready to control an outbreak of an infectious disease in our clinics. Recommendations for text simplification. Simplification of subtitles following easy-to-read recommendations according to Inclusion Europe guidelines include the following points. Do not put much information on the screen. Consider adding name labels to identify speakers when necessary. Apply easy and plain language principles to simplify the information on the screen. If possible, each line should be a full sentence. In terms of technical aspects, text simplification would be the following. Use sans serif font types with a larger font size without interfering with the picture. Maximum of 2 lines in Sensatim subtitles, and provide enough time to read the subtitles. Check contrast between subtitles and the background. Do not change the position of the subtitles. If possible, ensure that video and sound have a high quality. Further considerations. When possible, provide subtitles in combination with other accessibility services, such as audio description and audio subtitles. Provide information about the content, the speakers, characters, location, already in advance. The role of end users. When possible, and mainly after delivering the real-time intralingual subtitling service, try to involve end users for the validation of the acceptability and comprehensibility of the subtitles. plain language in real-time interlingual subtitles. Eugeni and Roch 2017 provide the following guidelines to apply plain language in real-time interlingual subtitling. First, express one concept per paragraph. Second, prefer short sentences, maximum one verb possible. Third, use punctuation only to discriminate sentences. Fourth, use coherence whenever possible. Fifth, prefer linear syntax. 6. Prefer active form. 7. Avoid anaphora and cataphora. 8. Avoid ambiguous words and technicalities. 9. Avoid acronyms. And 10. Avoid colloquial or typical cultural-oriented terms. An example of plain language in real-time interlingual subtitling would be the following. As a source text, we have John, whom I have been knowing since ages, is a good friend who will come and visit me at my parents' house, full stop. This could be turned into a subtitle in plain language as follows. John is a good friend of mine, full stop. I know him since we were boys, full stop. He will come and visit me at my parents' house, full stop. Aim. The aim of providing plain language is to increase the comprehensibility of the subtitles. Summary. As a summary, we would like to stress the following points. Barriers that prevent access to the content have to be removed. Recommendations for text simplification in line with easy and plain language guidelines take into consideration both linguistic and technical aspects. The involvement of end users is important to validate acceptability and comprehensibility of the subtitles. There are already existing plain language guidelines that apply in real-time interlingual subtitling practices. Exercises. The exercises for this video lecture are in the trainer's guide and the PowerPoint file.
LTA Live Text Access, Universitat Autónoma de Barcelona, SDI, Internationale Hochschule, Scuola Superiore per Mediatori Linguistici, ZDF Digital, European Federation of Hard of Hearing People FHO, Velotype, Subti Access, European Certification and Qualification Association ECQA. Co-funded by the Erasmus Plus program of the European Union. Erasmus Plus project 2018-1-DE01-KA203-004218. The information and views set on this presentation are those of the authors and do not necessarily reflect the official opinion of the European Union. Neither the European Union institutions and bodies, nor any person acting on their behalf, may be held responsible for the use which may be made of the information contained here.